Alright, this is Peacemaker number 2 from 1988. My ad review of the first issue of this series. It started getting a lot of views because it is one of the few reviews of a Peacemaker comic on YouTube. So I have decided to try and corner that market with a look at the second issue. Obviously, Peacemaker, he has since been announced to be a character in the new Suicide Squadron's film. He is played by that boxing champion man, John Cena. I have Ken enough. That is what the people who hate him say. In the crowd, in the audience, they all chant, I have Ken enough. I quite like him, and the costume is honestly perfect. I know the character will likely die in the film, but I am really looking forward to see him brought to life. I think Johnson Kenner, he is a great choice, and there is a promo piece where he is like saying that the character is basically Captain America if Captain America was a massive douche. And it made me a bit sad that he is not playing Us Agent instead. This cover is much better than the cover they had for the first issue, but on the inside it is much of the same. We have some super-powered terrorists and they're doing loads of terrorist shite. And then Peacemaker, he shows up and he kills them. Peacemaker is not a fantastic character. He is more of a supporting character, if you ask me. There's not much in him that makes him a solo star. For me, this book is more notable as it's part of a larger family of books in the late 80s at DC. What I call the super secret government spy espionage covert action superhero family of books. Among them is Suicide Squadrons, Man Killer, Captain Atom, and so on. Peacemaker, he never actually joined the Suicide Squadrons, but he did cross over with them a lot. So we have some mediocre action bits here, and I'll be honest, this isn't a very good book. The problem is that you have no real investment in Peacemaker. They haven't really set up a character to root for very well, and the action itself is perfunctory at best. You're not feeling anything when either side is shot at by the other. And if you're looking for action, if you're just looking for Peacemaker to run around and shoot things or beat things up, it's not fulfilling that remit. The action is just not that good, and the character has very little ganon for him. I would say this comic is boring. It was a chore to get through. I remember the first issue being the same. I can imagine a Peacemaker comic that works, but this isn't it. We have a lot of stuff establishing this dense, Cold War, Red Scare sort of plot, American and Russian conflict, and it's all been orchestrated by a Yellow Peril. This came out in the late 80s, and they still thought that Yellow Peril was acceptable. We actually have some interesting aspects of Peacemaker and his setup, and it could make for a good story. We have loads of stuff about psychological manipulation and him being crazy. He sees his Nazi dad all the time. His girlfriend and his maid are effectively plants, manipulating him to be a good soldier. And all that, it could be somewhat worth exploring, but it's an afterthought here. We didn't really get into it. It's just a bit of Peacemaker's status quo or his backstory. They didn't explore it, even though it is easily the most interesting and unique thing on display here. We also have the whole oxymoron thing, with him espousing peace via the medium of violence, which they didn't even bring up in this. Stuff like that, that is worth writing about. It is a hook for the reader, it's something to get invested in or gravitate towards. Instead, what we have is a bunch of plot and a bunch of action scenes, and it is all boring. We have a boring character, we have a boring plot, we have boring action, we have boring villains. We didn't have anything worth talking about here. The cover, I guess, the cover is decent. With this series though, with this, you could swap Peacemaker out. You could take this comic and remove Peacemaker and put a similar character in that role, and this wouldn't change much. Swap Peacemaker with Deathshot, same stuff. Swap Peacemaker with Deathstroke. Swap Peacemaker with Mad Dog or Dambuster or Mankiller or whoever. You could easily just retool everything here to not be a Peacemaker comic. It is a bad Peacemaker comic, and it's a bad comic as a whole because it's sinfully boring. The only thing that I felt invested in is right at the back, we have this letter. It's meant to be an in-universe field report on Peacemaker. This was better than the actual comic. This sets up and discusses aspects of Peacemaker and his personality that sound a lot more exciting than what we're getting in this story. I didn't like not enjoying comics. I really didn't. I feel upset. I want this to be good. I want there to be this excellent Peacemaker miniseries from the 80s that I can tell you all about and spread the word, but the only word that needs spreading about this is the word dull. I didn't recommend this. I rate this 7 thumbs up.